Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's PMI Friday webinar, Kaizen Tools that Add Value with Des Kelly. My name is Susanna Clark, and I'm going to be facilitating today. So that does include running the Q&A desk. So we're going to be using that throughout the presentation today. Those of you who are familiar with our webinars, you can talk to us through the Q&A, and you can find the chat buttons as well. They're all on your Zoom control panel. Please do keep your questions coming. Any comments you have, any observations, and I will put them to Des. Today's webinar is being recorded, and we will send you a link via email early next week to the full recording of both the audio and the presentation. So all the slides you're going to see today will be included in that. As usual, we are broadcasting live on Facebook and LinkedIn. So to those of you who are joining us through those live streams, welcome. In the future, to be able to participate in our polls, to receive the recording via email, and to make any suggestions for future topics, please do register for our webinars. You can find these at pmi.co.uk/webinars. Also, we're going to be sending everyone who's registered a short voice of the customer survey. We're always really grateful for your feedback, and also particularly for your suggestions for future topics for our Friday webinars. And anything that you would like us to cover, please do include that information. We've been running these webinars every week to support our clients and also our fellow industry practitioners in these difficult times. And we're very conscious that some people are currently not in work, and we're offering support for this. So if you are looking for an improvement role at the moment, you can see on the screen, you can send us your CV to review, and for feedback, we're really happy to help. This is a free service that we're offering. So please just send them in to team@pmi.co.uk, and we're really happy to help you. Finally, from me, before we get underway, we are looking for some willing volunteers. We've been developing our digital version of Red Beads. For those of you who know us and who've been through our training, you'll be familiar with Red Beads. And after we've done a number of experiments internally, we're now looking for some external volunteers to help us to test it. It's only going to take about an hour. We're obviously going to be doing it virtually, so we will send you an invite for it. So if you're willing to help us, please get in touch by email or let me know through the chat if you'd be willing to help. We'd be really grateful. So thank you all for your continued support. And now I'd like to hand over to Des.
Thank you very much, Sue. Welcome, everybody. It's great to see our Friday afternoon webinars are ever popular with ever increasing numbers. So wherever you are in the world or wherever time you are listening to this, very welcome to you all. So my name's Des Kelly. I'm a partner consultant at PMI. You may have joined me on previous events, but what are we going to be covering this afternoon? So what we're going to cover is, well, first of all, I'm going to put some real context in this, is to refresh what Gemba Kaizen really is. Because when I come to explain what my views are of the 5 most important tools or techniques, then it's probably worthwhile going back what Gemba Kaizen really is, and that's why I probably will have selected these tools. There are lots of tools. I have just gone for 5 this afternoon. And then when should these be used? So that's either the pre-event, during the event, or after the event. Now you see the little icon there in the actual agenda. That will appear on the slides, and it will color up in the area that it should be present in the either pre-event, during the event, or after the event. Many of you guys on the webinars will be very familiar with the 8 wastes. So I'm going to do a little poll on the 8 wastes. As you can see, this is how we determine 8 wastes: defects, overproduction, waiting, non-utilized talents, transport, inventory, motion, and excessive processing. So I just want a little bit of data from you, if you would do. So I'm going to give you this poll. Which of the 8 wastes do you believe is the most damaging? And I want this, just need this so that it will put some context into the conversation afterwards. And as you can see, the answers there are the 8 wastes, 1 to 8. If you would like, as soon as Suze has got the poll, she's got the poll going, I can see.
Launch the
so
poll.
you make your votes on that one, please.
Thank you, everybody. Very much appreciate your contributions here. So we've got a front runner at the moment of defects, but a bit of a spread at the moment. Is that what you're expecting, Des?
Interesting. It's interesting. I'm going to hold out for a moment until we stop the vote.
don't give away all your secrets.
Dennis,
you don't want to influence.
Influencing the data.
Okay, I'm just going to give that a few more moments. Thank you so much for
an awful lot of people in the webinar today, so it's great. So it does take a little bit of time. So
okay, thank you. I'm going to end the polling and share the results with everybody.
Right.
So there we have it, a leader of defects with 30%.
Interesting. I find that a little bit surprising, and I will explain that as I go through the afternoon. So it'd be good if we could have that captured somewhere, Suze, but defects 30%, overproduction 17%, weighting 10%, non-utilized talents 25%. Now that's really interesting. Transport only 1%, inventory 5%, motion no one at all, and excessive processing 12%. Okay, thanks, Sue. That's really very, very interesting.
That's okay. And I just wanted to add, we've just had some feedback through the chat. So saying that from Rich, saying defects can very often cause many of the other types of waste through failure demand. So I think that. I just wanted to share that with people as to what his view was.
That's right. So that's why I was surprised, because I certainly, I'm with Richard there, is for me, the overwhelmingly most damaging one is defects, because it does indeed either cause the need for or directly causes the others. So I am a little bit surprised by that, but I would love to have a conversation. All the other wastes are not good. But defects for me is the cardinal sin amongst all, which I have to say a good proportion of the population listening this afternoon agree with me. Right, so that's great. Thank you for doing that. I really appreciate the information we've got there. So let me try to get this to go forward. There we go. Okay, so Gemba Kaizen Principles. I'm just going to take a bit of time just to go through the Gemba Kaizen Principles, and that will give context and perspective to what I'm going to be talking about when I come to looking at the tools. So first of all, these are the principles of Gemba Kaizen. These come directly from Imai's work, and particularly his book Gemba Kaizen. So they're not my view, they are the view of the creator and probably what one would consider the father of Gemba Kaizen, Masaki Imai. He also said, so Kaizen and management was the first one. Process versus results is the next. Following plan, do, check, act, and SDCA, which is standardized, do, check, act. And I'm going to take a little bit of time to explore that because it is quite important. Putting quality first. Now that will explain what that means. Speak with data. And finally, the next process is the customer. So let's have a look at some of these in just a little bit of exploration, just to set the scene. So Kaizen and management. In MI's view, management has two primary functions. The first is maintenance, ensuring that everybody can follow the standard operation procedure. The second is improvement of those standard operating procedures, activities directed towards elevating the current standard to a better place. This is a little model that he generated and is quite useful to actually see. So we've got the levels in the organization from workers, supervisors, middle management, and top management. And you can see in the little icon across, there's a diagonal. On the bottom right-hand side, maintenance, and on the top left-hand side, improvement. And what this is trying to infer is that workers and supervisors are predominantly working to maintain the process whilst having a part of their time in improvement. And as you can see on the other side, top management, for example, they're almost entirely responsible for improvement and only a little bit for maintenance. So you can interpret that as you wish. There's a second graphic that comes along with this, which takes a similar thing and looks at, okay, that bit that was improvement in the previous graphic is broken up into two different elements. Kaizen, which is the role of, as you can see, that goes through in that way, and innovation. And this is Kaizen, and that's the subject of today's conversation. And this is something like Six Sigma. Six Sigma would be the innovation. Certainly it's the one that MI follows. So that's Kaizen and management having functions, maintenance and improvement. Process versus results is the next one. So Kaizen fosters process-oriented thinking, since processes are what must be improved if the results are to improve. And it is absolutely clear that failure to achieve the planned results indicates a failure of the process. And what's really important here, it is the most crucial element of Kaizen process is the commitment and involvement of top management in understanding process orientation. Process versus results. Okay. Now, this is a graphic I used a couple of weeks ago, and it's very interesting because Imai himself has stated, and he's quite unequivocal about this, is that all of these things, Six Sigma, Design for Six Sigma, TPM, Lean, 8D, Hoshinkanri, they cannot be delivered effectively if processes versus results is not understood. And that's quite a key learning point. So process versus results was that one. Then following PDCA and SDCA. So it is one of the most important concepts of the Kaizen process. At the beginning of any new work, the process will be unstable. Therefore, before one can start plan, do, check, act, the process must first be stabilized through standardize, do, check, act. I'm emphasizing this for a particular point, and he demonstrated this graphic. This is a photograph I took from his book. I used it in a webinar a couple of weeks ago, but I just want to emphasize, so that's SDCA first, then plan, do, study, act. And there's a method in this, and becomes important when we come to understand running our Kaizen activities. So a little bit of explanation of these, because there's some difference if you attend our Greenbelt programs or our leadership programs. We use the modified Deming cycle, which is plan, do, study, act, just to actually emphasize it's exactly the same concept as plan, do, check, act. It was changed in the West to plan, do, study, act to aid leaders' ability to understand it. However, if you go to Asia, and particularly in Japan, they will always use plan, do, check, act. So we've got plan, do, check, act, and now standardize, do, check, act. So those are the cycles that we've got. So that's, and this is as guided by Imai. So I'm just gonna have a quick look. You're familiar with this now because you've seen it a number of times on our presentations. So this is process management and improvements, standardize, do, check, act, followed by plan, do, check, act. Just gonna drop that little graphic in again that we had earlier in one of the earlier slides and point out, right, Kaizen is the continuous improvement element. Now we reference it as standardize, maintain, improve. Touch on that in a minute. There's Six Sigma. So this, if hopefully you can now see that, so I'm just going to back it away so you see it pop in again. So you see standardize, that's pretty obvious. The do and the check are part of the maintain, and act is the improve. So standardize, do, check, act, and then you're into plan, do, study, act, plan, do, check, act, whatever it is going on. So that's one of the key points that we need to be able to emphasize. The combination of standardize, do, check, act, and plan, do, check, act as a living cycle. Okay. The next one was to put in quality first. Now, again, these are just the principles that organizations should be following if they're going to use Kaizen tools. Now, of the primary goals of quality, cost, and delivery, quality must always have the highest priority. Now, practicing the quality first credo requires management commitment because managers often face the temptation of making compromises. It could well be, well, we'll be a little bit late on delivery because it's cheaper to do, right? Or we have to get those out the door now, we'll accept a little less quality. Or no, that's too expensive, so we'll accept a little less quality. That is an absolute no in Kaizen world. Quality has to be first. It is the absolute heartfelt desire never to create a defect that is central to putting quality first. And there's something that that Imai says quite clearly. Kaizen will not work optimally if you don't put quality first. One of the things he says is, in referencing to quality and defects, he states quite clearly, don't accept a defect, don't get it, don't make a defect, and don't send it. And it's that credo that actually resonates throughout the whole of the Kaizen concept. So the next one then, speaking with data. And this is going to be quite important. And Kaizen is a problem-solving process. Now, I've actually put the reference from Imai's Gemba Kaizen book on there because I actually have a belief that some of you will be saying, no, it's not. So I just wanted to put it in there. Kaizen is a problem-solving process. And in order for a problem to be correctly understood and solved, the problem must be recognized and the relevant data gathered and correctly analyzed. Now, Imai actually said, and analyze. And it's only my last 25 years of experience have said to me, data needs to be correctly analyzed so that you get an understanding of it. And again, trying to solve a problem without hard data is akin to resorting to hunches and feelings. And that's something that that Imai has said in his books. Or in my words, just simply taking a gamble or a punt that you might have got the right thing. Collecting, verifying, and analyzing data is a recurring theme through Kaizen from its very first start right the way through its continuation. The process is the next customer. All work is a series of processes, and each process will have its suppliers as well as its customers. Now, there are two types of customers: internal, those are within the organization, and external, outside of the organization. I think most of you know that, but I just wanted to actually step it out because we're going to talk about it in a little bit more detail shortly. Most people working in organizations deal with the internal customers. Most people deal with the internal customers. This realization should lead to a commitment never to pass a defect or inaccurate information to those in the next process. Now, again, this is a principle, so it's something that we need the organization to absolutely ardently believe. When every person in the organization practices this axiom, the external customer by default receives high quality. The next process is the customer. Never pass on a defect is the credo. So that leads me then to starting to look at and exploring the top 5 tools or concepts. And this is Desi's view. And before I go on, I want to actually extract another poll. So what I just want to do, and I'm going to allow you to select the 3 that you most use. So here are some of the tools that are available to the practitioner who is going to practice Gemba Kaizen. 5S, process flowcharts. 5 Ys, possibly. SPC, statistical process control. The 5 Rs, cause and effect diagram. 8 Ways, the 3 Ms, and just to make clear, that's Muda, Murai, Murai techniques. Standardization, value stream mapping. Now, in our polls, we can only have 10. So if any of you got another or any other, will you please drop it in the chat and we'll have a look. So hopefully that poll's up and running.
Yeah, that's polls is launched, and thank you for those who started to contribute your answers. Please have a look. We've got some interesting clear runners, 5 Ys. And Rich, he's suggesting the SIPOC and the PCD are tools that he would also recommend and suggest.
Absolutely, that's good. So yes, Rich, I would totally agree with you on that. And I probably would consider that, well, certainly the SIPOC I would consider as part of the suites of answer 2, but PCD, yeah, that's an interesting one. I'll if I can remember it during the course of the conversation, I'll touch on it. It's very good.
Got a second vote in the chat for SIPOC as well from
Yeah,
Adrian.
that's
Thank
good.
you, Adrian.
Excellent.
Okay, still a few votes coming in. So if you just want to make your selections, and then I will close the polling and share the results with everybody. Okay, thank you. And process flowcharts. takes the lead with 58%.
Excellent. Right. I hope my memory will serve me well on this one here, but let me pick out a couple of highlights on that. The highest is process flowcharts. Down towards the bottom is SPC. Cause and effects quite high, 8 waste quite high. Excellent. Okay, good. Lovely. Thank you so much for that. Suze, I don't know whether that can stay or whether I can see that later, but that's going to be quite a useful piece.
All you need to do is let me know and I will show it to you.
Oh, it's lovely to have a co-pilot so diligent. Thank you. Right, so that's poll 2 then out the way. That's great. So thank you for that, everybody. So one of the things I'm now going to pick up on, and I'm using MI's words on this one because Gemba Kaizen, and we're talking about tools for Kaizen, is very much MI's suite. And he said these things about saying, if a standard means the best way, it follows that an employee should adhere to the same standard in the same way every single time. And therefore, he then went on to say this: there can be no improvement where there are no standards. The starting point of any improvement is to know where one stands. So I'm going to pull this back now and actually just say, right, okay, this then for me is going to be the area of focus for me on the top 5 tools that we're going to be considering when we initiate our Kaizen studies. So hopefully that's put the context in place for you and why it might be important. So let's have a quick look. So standardizing then. So to standardize the process, you need to understand what the customer needs. Flowchart the process, document the standard, mistake-proof the process, organize the workspace, that's the 5 S's in many respects, and then develop and deliver training. To maintain it, we need to be able to measure the process, monitor it continually with control charts, manage it visually as well, and then maintain the standard. And that will give us the opportunity to continually improve. That will allow us to prevent the recurrence of problems, remove waste and variation, have a review process, and identify needs for when we may need a step change improvement. So these are all part of the actual concept of Kaizen, continual improvement. So then, what are the most useful tools that I see at this moment in time, and when do we use them? So last week, or a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, Damien, my colleague, had a presentation on Kaizen, and this is one of his slides, which I've stolen with pride. And I want to do it because I just want to actually point out something. Kaizen is an iterative process that goes on, should go on daily, if not daily, weekly, where the teams come together and they continually improve and continually drive out waste and non-value added out of their processes. And again, to reiterate, there can be no improvement where there are no standards. So I'm going to look at the tools we would use maybe in our first Kaizen event, the one that might be slightly longer. And I'm now going to give you the top 5 tools as I see it for my first Kaizen event and when those tools should be used. So the first tool is learning to see and understanding the voice of the customer, VOC. So you can see the little graphic at the bottom, it's pre-Kaizen event. This you should do before any Kaizen event. And it's really this that we're looking at. Who is the customer we should listen to when considering the Kaizen activity? This will determine what we ask. So remember we spoke earlier about internal and external customers. So let's have a look at this. This is our process, or these are our processes in the business with the final customer at the end. If we look at the link between the first and second process, that gives us our category 1 customer. That's the next process leader. And remember, the next process is the customer. So that becomes category 1. And that will happen throughout the chain until we get to the final one, when we actually have the category 2 customer, who is the primary customer. Now, I just want to actually determine that there is a slight difference between them for this purpose. Now, these are going to pop up on this screen, but because it's probably going to be a little bit hard for you to read, I'm going to give it a bigger view. And there you are, the bigger view. So this needs to be done before we run our Kaizen event. So Category 1 customer, the next process leader. Go to Gemba. Go to Gemba. See how your output is used and what your customer does with your output. What are the key attributes that your customer needs from you? Then, very importantly, operationally define how you and they will judge the correctness of those attributes. And then check if there's anything else that you can do that would make their task easier, more efficient, or more effective. Remember, the next process is the customer. All too frequently in organizations, the next process is often the competition. And we've got to avoid that. So we need the internal customers to be known and recognized as such. Then category 2, the primary customer. Right, do all the things you did with the process customer, the internal customer, but then add into it the study. And here we've got our Kano model, where we go and understand what are the expected requirements of the customer, what is it they want and what is it they need, and then from that try to understand what might delight them. So that's going to be understanding the voice of the customer, the first tool we must use before we have our Kaizen event, because we don't want to go into our Kaizen event not knowing what the process we're trying to improve needs to deliver. So now we're actually going to be in our event, and this is my second choice of tool, and it is process mapping. Now this can only be done correctly during the first Kaizen event, and it will be modified thereon after. So with this process flowchart, and I've got an integrated flowchart here, you and the team should go to Gemba and map the process. Use the people who do the work to explain what happens, what goes well, and what not so well. Use a flowchart to describe the flow of work. It's easier to take a flowchart like that because people can visualize what's happening. And you can use the flowchart to place a record of what you see, hear, and feel. And a flip chart in the corner of the room, or a flip chart in Gemba itself, allowing people to contribute, is a really great way of doing it. So first thing is understand the process. And obviously you can stratify this, and you might have SOPs, or you might have task instructions, you may have other things that will augment this, but understand the process. Okay. Then learning to see again. Now this again is in the event itself. And in this case, I'm now going to advocate the use of 8 ways. We're going to advocate the use of 8 ways in a slightly in a structured way. So if we have a situation, so we need a structured approach to deal with each process step at a time. So if we have our flowchart, we can now put our 8 ways. Now, as you see there, we've put our downtime recording this. So imagine this as another flip chart just beside the flip chart that is the flowchart. Use the 8 categories of waste as a lens to investigate beyond what is obvious. So pick up the defects and say, does this process step generate defects? Pick up the lens that says waiting. Does this process cause waiting? Does this have non-utilized talents? You can use it in that way. So use it as a lens. And record using Post-it notes or some other medium in the column you've got. Flip charts, again, I say, are brilliant for doing this. And remember, though, this is a team activity. It'll get all of the team, if you can get all of the team, the customers and suppliers involved if you can. This identifies lots of areas where the team can make improvement. So you can populate this with lots of rich information, lots of rich information. So 8 ways. So learning to see. Now, this is developing theories for improvement, again, during the event. So we actually have, during the event, we've now generated lots of things that maybe aren't going quite so well. So we're going to have a couple of ways of looking at it. So I just want to give you this. Remember, Gemba Kaizen is a problem-solving technique. And you might have seen this graphic a couple of weeks ago. I showed it in one of my presentations, but I just want to bring it out because there's something we can learn from this. If we have on the y-axis, that's the one on the left-hand side going upwards, we have the resources or costs to bring around a change, go from low at the bottom to high at the top. And then again on the x-axis, the red going along the bottom of the chart, the change is very easy over to very complex. If it's a very easy change, and the resource and cost is very low, just do it. Just do it. There's no point going into complex problem solving or into complex. The team can do it there and then. And that's why the leadership is important when we're doing Game of Kaizen, because you must give the team the authority to just do it. If it's a little bit more complicated, you might need the 8D problem solving type technique, the 8 disciplines, or the team orientated process improvement. At the top right-hand corner, if it's complex and high cost, you may need to have a chartered improvement project, which is probably going to be your 6 Sigma green belt or black belt project. In terms of just do it, I just wanted to put a couple of lines up for you on that one there. So basically, I understand the problem and I know the solution. They're often low cost or no cost with little effort to actually introduce. It may in some cases require money and effort if it involves replacing or fixing a damaged part or a piece of equipment. So here's something in the table. So for example, after our study and after our mapping out of the process, it becomes very clear that operators 1, 2, and 3 do the same task in a different way and get different results. Then the solution to that is select the best way. Well, you don't need to do brainstorming for that. I mean, you well need to have discussions about what is the best way, but just do it. Just go and do it. It could be that after studying the process, you observe that one of the problems you actually have is that the temperature of the oven is lower than we need because the seal on the oven is broken. The solution is to replace the seal. Well, just do it. You don't need brainstorming for that. Or it could be something as simple as software we're using is out of date. Buy an upgraded package. Again, just do it. Just do it. So remember, if you've got any questions or any issues, then please bring them along and we'll have a look at them. The 8D. Now, there's interesting this one here, and I think that this one here is brought in some of the tools and techniques you've got. So 8Ds, the 8 discipline, goes back to 1986, originated in Ford. So 8D problem solving, you form the team, you describe the problem. Notice we use flow charts with that. Contain the problem. If you've got a problem, there's something going out, stop it. Then we've got the root cause analysis. And these tools are principally the cause and effect diagrams and the 5 whys. You allow the team to generate ideas. Once you've identified your corrective actions, you then need to standardize them. So you'll need to use flow charts again. And then you need to be able to just check what the risks are going forward. And then at the end of it, celebrate. And remember, this is something that's going to be done during the activity itself. So Suze.
That's okay. So I just wanted to add, I think that, just for our audience, it's interesting to think about the fact that all of this can be done virtually as well. So where we talk about flip charts, there's absolutely nothing these days to stop us using those virtual flip charts. We are using all kinds of collaboration boards virtually. If any of you want to know any more information about that, please do get in touch. We can definitely help with that and give you some advice on what we found to be most effective.
Yeah, that's a great point to raise, Susan. I will say is that we don't have to explain the times we're in, but one of the things I found to be absolutely fantastic in terms of our ability to continue work is the fact that we can do things virtually. Almost everything we can do on here, you can do virtually. And sometimes, for example, when mapping processes, it can actually be faster. It can actually be faster. It's quite an interesting learning point. So thank you, Sue, for pointing that out. It's really good. So that's point 4 then. Right, so top 5 tools for concepts. I'm now with my 5th. Now, I'm going back to the premise behind what I said about Game of Kaizen, being principally a problem-solving technique, and that without robust analyzed data, you're going to struggle to really understand or improve your problems. So the 5th of the concepts I'm going to put in is actually learning to see what the data is telling us. Now, this is the use of statistical process control and the concepts behind it. Now, I'm going to draw you back because in our poll, only 10% of you said that SPC was important to you. Now, that, I think, is potentially an opportunity for improvement. So let me explain why. Now, this is where, unfortunately, I probably put my Yoda voice on and actually say, this is what Dr. Deming said about variation. Variation, there will always be between people, in output, in service, in product. What is the variation trying to tell us? Right? Data will always vary. Now, variation, many of you will know that common cause variation is always present. Normally due to the design, inputs, and operation of the process. Frequently, it's impossible or very difficult to assign a particular cause to a data point that is the result of common cause variation. Right, so impossible to assign a particular cause to a data point that is the result of common cause variation. Yet in problem solving, you are determining what you believe to be a cause. So that's an interesting point to think about. If we then look at the assignable cause, right, this is where a specific change or changes occur in the inputs or operation of the process that you should be able to observe if you're attentive. Now, if you are observing it and you are attentive and the assignable cause has occurred and it's not a good thing, we'll just reinstate the status quo. Just go back and do or stop doing what caused the assignable cause, unless the assignable cause is positive, in which case capture it. Assignable causes can be fleeting, that's short term, or they can be lasting. So the types of variation, even the very simplest of processes generate considerable variation in their output, even when no recognizable changes occur in the process. Reacting inappropriate to variation will cause things to get worse. Now, control charts and statistical process control are the only robust method of helping you be attentive, avoiding errors, and understand the difference between common cause and assignable cause variation. And here's the really rub of it, is that if you do not know whether you're dealing with common cause or assignable cause variation, your problem solving will be at risk. And that's something that we need to be very wary of in the actual business itself. I'm also going to now show you this. So the question I'm going to pose to you is, how will you know that any change is an improvement? So the graphic on the left-hand side is the data that we've got from our pre-event data study. And here the data is being put into an individual moving range chart, and you can see the natural limits of performance from this. Now, this is on-time, a status of on-time delivery. Now, we've run our Kaizen event. Did the work we undertook, did it give us a benefit? Well, if you don't know how to analyze data, you're going to be short on knowledge, because you're going to have to make an assumption whether it is. So here we can actually go to the right-hand side, and you see at the post-event, you can track whether or not the differences and the changes you made within your process have resulted in an improvement. And that's why understanding data and SPC is actually so important for Kaizen activities. And that's one thing I hope that you will come to terms with. And I assure every single person on this webinar today, there is not one of you that could not do an individual moving range chart within 15 minutes of talking with someone at PMI. Guarantee it, right? It's not a difficult technique, but it is so profound. And also, by the way, it's the reason why Suze needs to help with the red bead design, because it's one of the tools we use to help teaching that subject. Okay, so then the top tools. The top tools, not all the tools, but the top ones. Here are my 5 top tools for a Kaizen startup. First, understand the voice of the customer. Understand the voice of the customer. What is it they want? What is it your process should be giving to their process? If you don't know this, any improvement is but transient and very, very small. Secondly, correctly analyze the data. Now, this one is at the pre-event. If you don't have any data before the event, how will you know that anything you've done in the event is an improvement? You need the data, and that data needs to be correctly analyzed. Then 3, in this case, understand the process. Understand the process. Then understand the issues using 8 wastes. And then, having understood what the issues are, you may need to prioritize them within the Kaizen activity, and then wholehearted effort into developing and testing solutions. And we can use the 8D type techniques for that. You could just narrow it down to the cause and effect diagram and 5 whys, but I like the complete picture of it, and it gives you a permanent record. And then after the event, you're back to analyzing the data. And this is analysing the data too. Really important that we can see that the changes we made are an improvement. Now, I've only selected the top 5 tools that I would use as I'm getting going on my Kaizen event. And I would actually point out, though, that there are lots of other things that you could do. So, for example, I would hope that anyone who is at a second or maybe third event, you are focusing on 5S, organising the area to make it clear so any abnormalities come out. Value stream mapping, really very, very important. Visual management, understanding Mura and Murai, creating Pokeoki, understanding TAC, capability, analysing things with data. You might have to go to the right-hand side. You've got the 5 R's up there. That's the remove, reduce, replace. You'll know those. Hypothesis testing. So you may need to have some really, mini-tab and have some actually quite forensic statistical analysis. And you may be also doing things like EMP, measurement process analysis, those sorts of things. And yes, SciPot diagrams would be part of my study of the value stream map. The PCD, the problem context diagram, is actually when I'm moving out of my Kaizen activity and possibly into my Greenbelt project, where I really want to focus on and prioritize which process am I going to work on, because it's the one that's most likely going to be giving me the problem. So I think that's quite an interesting one. When PCD came up, PCD is a fantastic one when you tool when problem context diagram, sorry, for those who may not be familiar with it, is a fantastic tool, really excellent tool for being able to sort out what are my priorities when I'm going to go to a more complex problem. So that little diagram, I sort of say it's over here, it's a little bit more complex. That's probably where I would be using the problem context diagram, and probably not so much in my Kaizen activity as such. So we're coming close to the end of my little talk on this one here.
Before you go into your summary, I've got a question that's been asked. Could you just clarify again the significance between analysing the data pre-event and post-event for everybody?
Right, to go through that again. Right, let me back up a little bit then. Let me see if I can get back to the slide that it was. So if you just, there we go, this one here. Right, so if, for example, when let me back up further one more even, to go to this one here. Right, let me go to this one. So let's quickly get to this one here. We have spoken with our customers and we've been with them and we've asked them what's important. And they've told us what's important. We've got to agree how we will measure, how we will judge the correctness of those attributes that they look for. It could be, for example, that they want the component or the data, and they might refer to it on time. We need to operationally define what does on time mean and then measure it. And that takes us to a situation whereby, let's say that it is just simply on time. I'm now going to go to, where is it? This one here. There we go. So this is the on-time delivery. So we go back and we collect the data and we understand what has the performance been in the recent past. Because if the customer says this is what is important to them, and we're not achieving it, this is what needs to be improved. This is what needs to go into the Kaizen event as the thing that we want to improve. So we have the event, we understand what the things are that might be generating the issue with on-time delivery. We put in some fixes, but how do we know that those fixes are an improvement? How do we know those changes that we've made to the process are actually an improvement and not simply change? All too frequently, Gemba Kaizen work is just change, not necessarily improvement. So then on the end of it, we then have that same data analysis again. And if this graphic here, you can see we've had our Gemba Kaizen event. It's here. Hopefully you can see my cursor. It's here. And look, the actual failure to on-time delivery number has reduced. It's come down. And we can prove that statistically. So we know that our changes have brought around an improvement. Did that answer the question, Sue?
That's perfect. Thank you. I've got another couple of questions. So this is a question from David, who's saying, so in the Kaizen event, is it common for teams to make assumptions about the process? So they skip the process mapping step because they assume they know what happens, and therefore potentially they miss improvements, and rather than going to Gemba and capturing the process steps as they actually happen day to day.
Right. So how do I say this in a polite way? I think, right. If you do not understand the process fully, if you have not studied the process, if you have not evaluated what goes well, what doesn't go well, how people feel about the process, then you haven't got Kaizen. You might have industrial tourism, but it's certainly not Kaizen. Kaizen is centered around having a standardized process. Remember, MI's view, if you don't have a standard, you can't make improvements. The only way you can have a standard is by documenting and agreeing the process with everybody involved, selecting the best known way for doing it and making sure everyone does it and then maintain it. So remember what management roles were. Management was establishing the standard operating procedure that the team are going to follow and then maintaining that, making sure people have got it. So frankly, if it's a completely wrong thing to do, if anything, you should spend more time studying the process and evaluating it. Never, ever short circuit understanding the process. It is the thing you're trying to improve. If you haven't articulated it clearly, how can you be sure you've improved it? So never make a shortcut. And I know our delegate, that's what he was actually driving at, because that's how he framed his question, was it not so?
It was indeed. And I have another one, which is from Adrian, saying, I've always been a fan of the workout and see a lot of similarities with Kaizen events. What do you think are the major differences, Des?
The title. Right, yeah. That's all. Right. So what you'll find is that different organizations around the world, you might hear some people refer to this as Blitz Kaizen workouts. I've even heard people referring to these now as scrum downs, which is a steal from effectively the project management approach called Agile, right? They've just addressed names to it. If, in essence, what you're trying to do is to get group activity collectively working together to improve a process, and you're using these tools, it doesn't matter what you call it. So call it Kaizen, Gemba Kaizen, workout, scrum downs, it doesn't really matter as long as the intention is fully understood. It's about improving the process and improving the results for the customer and making the process more efficient and more effective. Call it what you like. It really doesn't matter.
Thank you. And there's a question from Viva, so which I will ask Des, but before I ask it, I would like to say, anyone who's got any other questions around Kaizen and what makes a good Kaizen opportunity, we did do a webinar on this 2 weeks ago. You can find them on pmi.co.uk/webinars. The recording of that will be in there. But Viva's question, Des, is for everybody, could you just reconfirm, what does the word Kaizen mean and where does it come from?
Right, so Kaizen comes from, it's a Japanese word, and it is effectively continuous improvement.
Thank you. So thank you, everybody. That's all the questions. Well done, Des. Thanks for getting through those, and thank you everyone for asking.
Good stuff. Just the point is that if you haven't, and if you can see that, I know not a small graphic, but that's the book Gemba Kaizen. It's a really good little read. It's in my own book. It talks about it will give you a lot of insight into there. And one of the things I would also say for every continuous improvement practitioner, every one of our webinistas is studying the subject can be both a relief and a joy. It will allow you to be able to see beyond certain things. So these webinars are there not to educate you, but to intrigue you. So if you've got any other questions or any other things you need to know, then rattle us with emails and come back onto our website and ask us questions. We will share our knowledge and we will share our understanding of how to do things in a better way. So please do that. So any other questions are worthy. So let me just see. Now, I think I'm going to get close to the summary soon. So this is the summary, right, that I've got to. First of all, Kaizen is a management approach. It's a management-led approach focused on the maintenance and improvement of a process. Irrespective of what you call it, it doesn't really matter. As long as it's got quality first credo. So this is don't make a defect. Well, sorry, don't receive a defect, don't accept one, don't make it, and most certainly don't ship it. The customer must be first in your thoughts. You must understand what it is they need, desire, require. And this is another one of the points. Data has to have been correctly analyzed. So data that has been correctly analyzed is going to be critical to knowing if your change is an improvement. If you cannot determine whether the change you're making is an improvement, you should challenge yourself as to whether it's necessary to make the change. Don't make changes that aren't an improvement. Your Kaizen event should be seen as the first of a series of ongoing activities for the continual drive for improvement. And that, Suze, is my summary of the day.
Sorry, couldn't get myself off mute there, Des.
I was worrying there for a moment that I'd disappeared into the ether.
No, not at all. Thank you very much, Des. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And before we close, just a couple of reminders. Just wanted to let you know we are going to be launching our new version of our online Yellow Belt in February. So this is perfect for anybody who is looking to start running Kaizen improvements and wants to help build the knowledge and the skills of the people within your organization to support you in Kaizens. So if you're interested for yourself or for any members of your team, do get in touch. It's a perfect place to start. Also, we are continuing our offer of providing an Apple iPad to equip everybody for a great virtual experience when they enroll on our public courses, be that our Lean Six Sigma Green Belt, our Black Belt, or our Master Black Belt courses. So please do take advantage of that. The aim is to provide you with an additional piece of equipment that will help you that you can use during the training. So it will give you an additional screen. You can use that as a collaboration board. You can use that as a camera, whatever works best for you. And when the training is over, it's yours to keep. Finally, please do look out for our Voice of the Customer survey. You're going to receive that from us shortly, and we'd be really grateful if you could fill all your comments in and give us plenty of feedback on both today's session and also any topics you'd like us to cover in the future. So that brings us to the end of today's webinar. You can see on the screen our future webinars. We look forward to seeing you through February as well, where we're going to be looking at, in particular, daily process management. And so on behalf of PMI, on behalf of Des and myself, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. I wish you a very safe and a very relaxing weekend. Thank you very much.